we were worried about winter storms. There was a movie that got pulled. I saw it on the big screen, and then they pulled it. It was what was his name that plays? He has two sons, Charlie Sheen. Who is the father?
Oh, you mean Martin Sheen?
Martin Sheen did a movie where he was a priest at the Vatican that went in to talk about a nuclear winter and the concern of a storm cloud. Do you remember that one?
I do. Yes.
Okay. They pulled that movie. You can't find it anywhere anymore. But that back then, that was a big deal. Detonating a nuclear warhead in the atmosphere would cause a solar winter. I mean, a nuclear winter. Yeah. And today, we're seeing that happen with 5G technology. That Paradise, I don't know if you're up to date on what's happened in Paradise. They're actually, PG&E has filed bankruptcy, and now they're going to take a bunch of individuals at PG&E and try them for murder. And basically, the 5G went unstable in Paradise. And the so-called particle beam weapons, they weren't particle beam weapons, those blue lights that were going around. I have tomography and infrared, and I got a chance to look at closer imaging on what was happening. And you can actually see it. The laser light, blue lights were leaping from one smart meter to the next. And what it was doing essentially was causing them to become unstable and explode. And the fire that ensued because of the microwave band touch off caused more than 1,000 people that are missing are going to be discovered to be in ash. It was worse than anybody had. It's so bad that now the local communities here, and I live less than 100 miles from this area, are now prohibiting 5G anywhere. Cotati, others, one of the counties over here, Curry County in Oregon, it's outlawed, not going. Now, what ultimately, in my read, is going to happen, it's this nuclear winter thing, that we have new technology, just like when the nuclear bomb came out, and we had this fear of it, igniting the atmosphere and causing the Earth to become a Holocaust. That is a reality with 5G. And if they deploy the 5G, there is a higher likelihood of that happening than even nuclear weapons. And that is, the fires were so quick, a house burnt down in 4 minutes, not 4 hours. Now, when you have wood and a home, it doesn't burn to the ground in ashes in minutes. It takes hours to do that, even with deployment and fires and all the rest of it. And the fact that it was so hot and so intense, the house is gone, and yet it was so quick, it didn't set off any of the timber around it. All the, you can see the house was burnt to the ground, and there's nothing left of it. You can actually see the smart meters where the charring occurred, where the actual transmitters in them went unstable and started bouncing back and forth to all the smart meters, and all the houses went up all at once.
So you're what? You're reaching temperatures, what, 5,000 degrees?
Plasma. You're close to a plasma. Yeah, that's why glass was slagged. You remember when people said, well, you can't get that kind of a temperature from a fire. It is correct. You can with microwave. And that was what happened. And it wasn't a Star Wars weapon. It wasn't, particle beam weapon. It was just one smart meter going unstable and setting them all off.
Well, if the same principle applies what we have in our homes, a microwave, I mean, it's the same bandwidth, same principle.
You realize how dirty an atmosphere we live in right now in electromagnetics. I have a tri-field meter, and you can go into a bedroom and, you can discover where the leakages are in your house.
I have one here. I do it all the time.
It's critical because that has LD50 ratio. It's a lethal dose 50. And what your concerns were with nuclear energy, that was 70 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now you know, we've got something even worse with 5G. Basically, what we've done is brought gamma rays down to this level of the surface of Earth rather than having an atmosphere to absorb it, to protect us. And all these bandwidths, they have dosimetry. That means when I was in anesthesiology, I built the first aortic catheter. And to do that, I had to go back to class and get a doctorate in biophysics, which is different than my resident cavity. I'm solid state physics. And I went back and got a second doctorate in biophysics. And I studied biophysics under Jerry Pollack, by the way, you know, at the UW. He was the one that taught me, and he was my lead. And to do this, I discovered that different parts of the body have different reflecting points for bandwidths. And in the microwave band, I had a Doppler transducer catheter, you know, that goes in through the femoral artery and goes up into the aortic arch, is measuring cardiac output, the single most important measurement in medicine. And what that is blood velocity times aortic cross-section. That tells you how healthy you are when you're under. And that's when they know, you know, they take your life support down near zero. And cardiac output is the way you measure it. And 10 megahertz is the bandwidth I sent out that would reflect off the blood and come back to the crystal, giving me Doppler. And that would tell me blood flow. And then I had 28 megahertz crystals around the outside because the aortic wall is opaque to 28 megahertz. Every single part of your body has different reflecting bands. And when you get in the microwave region, Dr. Beal's work in Florida runs it down, you know, in terms of LD50 ratios. That's lethal dose 50. That's why MRIs and things like that, you can only be in them so long. There's lethal toxicity to the thing, and it does damage. When you have a gigantic magnet pulling all your cell salts around and things like it, well, that's essentially what they're doing.
That's what they're doing.
You know, and predicated on the way they align, and they have imaging.
By the way, Rick, speaking on that, you know, when you take that theory of being in an MRI machine and that's big magnets, you're actually creating an artificial sphere. It's an electromagnetic, albeit, but you're immersing yourself into it.
You're doing a lot more than that, man. So while they're important, you know, bandwidths in the optical range, you know, visual light, where they might stick a tube down your nose to look down your stomach, you know, that's one thing. Or catheters that are, you know, looking at your polyps on, you know, that's kind of creepy. Going up your behind. That, you know, I'm going to say that these new bandwidths that they're using, I'm not even sure that ultrasound is safe for a baby. These are the fields that I worked in as a biophysicist, which is different than being, you know, resonant cavity oscillations. I'm a resonant cavity guy. I'm the one that did Schumann's resonance and things like that for my doctorate. And holographic concept of reality. And this new stuff in biophysics would indicate that all your different organs have, like your temporal lobes, that's your 0.3 to 3 gigahertz, or what they voice the skull. What that does, 0.3 to 3 gigahertz, causes the temporal lobes to expand. They heat up, they expand, they start to ring, and when you ring them, then you can heterodyne audio, and you can actually literally hear it inside your head without going through the ears. And that was a technology that was developed at Willow Grove with Alan Frey and others, that placing a voice anywhere in space, including outer space, microwave. And so what we're doing is not healthy.
You know, by the way, just want to say welcome everybody to the Friday Night Live. Nice of you to just drop in on the conversation. So we just want to welcome everyone. Thank you, moderators, and thank you one and all for joining us. You know, Rick, when you talk about this whole thing with what happened in Paradise, the whole thing with 5G, the fact that what we're dealing is in microwaves, and that's heat, that's radiation. This book I just finished reading, Gods of Eden, in the story that was interwoven in this fictional story with facts, is that they're working on a get this, a frequency that will articulate a holographic image. Approximately, they're working on, in the book, they were working to project out over 1,000 miles.
Oh, yeah. China has been working on some of that to try to create a reflected sun. And a lot of people have, there is never a, and it's an image up there.
And this one here is going to be used for the second return of Christ. And they're going to be, in this story, they went over Mecca at the peak of Ramadan and released the predators with the VX gas. So here was Jesus coming down on the white horse with his angels behind him. And as he's going through on this holographic projection, what people are not seeing are the 3 predator drones behind there that are spraying out the VX gas, which then takes care of the second coming.
The Arabs now have a really nice center where you can actually feel like you're in a pool with orca, killer whale, and like that. I don't know if you've seen.
I have seen that. Yeah,
that is part of the new technologies with functional MRIs that are going to be different than MRIs. The functional MRIs work a little differently. And I think what we're going to see in the future are a thing called a brain spa, where you go in to rotor-rooter belief systems, addictions. An addiction, and we're all addicted. We all have this, certain kinds of addictions, and the way you play your little rituals in the morning. Those addictions,
we are a heathen bunch down here. We all do it.
Put the toothpaste on your toothbrush.
Exactly.
You got these little games you play with yourself. That's what determines the distinction between something being an addiction and something being a tool. And the tool is a very, very fine line that needs a lot of introspection to know the one from the other. And once you can overcome certain things, there's this movie out that just confirmed what I was talking about called Glass.
Yeah.
Straight how he talks himself into the.
Y'all heard that? I'm just saying, when you're talking, I'm getting. It's almost Rick is. Yeah. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry. There is an interesting thing going on.
Talking to him, my gosh. I hear God.
But they're hearing it too. So there is it's interesting.
Yeah, well, they're going to harass me. Who knows what they're doing into the creepy trolls and the Alabama. Yeah.
So let's continue with this on this. So I'm reading this book as well, The Holographic Universe.
Oh yeah.
And holy crap.
You know why I'm not in that book?
Why aren't you in this book? I mean,
because at the time he wrote that, all of my work was classified top secret. Embryonic holography was the paper for mind control. And when Talbot wrote that book, Persinger and John Bohm had just started the implicate order. That was like in the 83. And all my work back then was all classified top secret, even though I had written it 10 years earlier. I did a conference in, I forget where it was, down in California. It was Claremont, at one of the universities there, a religious university. And I presented Project Paraphile, which was an artificial intelligence program. And I presented embryonic holography, which, by the way, will be in my book, Sleuth Central. And what they did, 1 week later, I'm in my bookstore in Seattle, and 4 individuals walked into my store, 2 in uniform and 2 in suits, placed me under arrest, and went through and pulled my own files on those things. And the embryonic holography paper I had to write, that was at the time Talbot. That was in 1970. When did I present that one? 1974. Talbot was just starting to write his work on that. But I'm going to get a
Rick, do you get guys in the suits and what have you?
No, they were military. I know.
Yeah.
and they placed me under arrest, and then the military guys went through all my files, jerking things, taking my own work. It happened to me, and I was working for the military. How can they do that?
Well, they got the guns,
Well, and the thing was, I couldn't call the police or call for help until after they left.
By the way, someone wrote me an email when you were supposed to be on last week. I had to postpone it, but they wanted your opinion on photosization. I've been doing photosization, PHOTOIZATION, photosization.
I'm not sure what the word means. I need another.
Yeah, I actually had to go in and I actually pulled up a white paper on it. And of course, I pulled up the one.
I don't know. I know how it goes. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I just have to.
You're an old man. I'm going to give you a little margin for losing it.
I love it. This is the guy.
I hate aging.
Well, you know what? People want to live forever, but you know what they don't want to do? They don't want to grow old.
So that's elixir, right?
Yeah. So here it is. What is photosization? Photosization. Anyway, the removal of a bond of electron by a photon loosely refers to a situation where external photons are the dominant source of ionization and heating. Apparently, this is a process.
Well, that's a new concept that they're coming out with.
Yeah.
Matter is able to create thought using light, and it's when they say light, it's in the visible light band. That's what, and it turns out the dimethyltryptamine in your body, that chill.
Mm-hmm.
Those are little cilia that stick out of the central nervous system on the spinal column and start a resonant movement of light beam up or down the spine. And it turns out that light beam is in the visible light band, which means if you straighten your back correctly in the right manner when you're creating that chill, you actually are stimulating the pineal gland, which is light sensitive. The pineal gland was originally for regulating the body for seasonal changes, and it got all screwed up with our artificial lighting and things. And so it is no longer functioning in that capacity like it would with lizards and other kinds of things. But that's one of the things that
I contend, sir, that it is where the soul dwells.
Well, the soul.
Or the spirit. I mean, whatever is driving this avatar.
There is we talked about this in a year ago, I think it was, when I first met you, or was it a year and a half ago? Yeah. On the moment of death, there's a 5-gram weight loss in the body. And what they're now suggesting that might be, what I'm suggesting, is microtubules with structured water. And Hammeroff and others are talking about that. But that concept originated in Seattle at the UW in anesthesiology. That was under John Bonica. And Bonica, Ray Fink was in charge of research, and Jerry Pollack was running a bunch of labs, and they brought me in as one of the boys from Brazil. At that time, Delgado, the famous guy that did chip implants and things like that, was working at Seattle in the lab next to mine before he moved back to Yale. And I saw all kinds of weird studies going on. That's where microtubule concepts came, because we were doing studies on acupuncture. That was Clinic 7. And we had no idea that when you poked your arm on the left side, you had responses on the right side. And there are no known circulatory systems that'll do that, except microtubule, which is on the surface of the skin. And the chi, what we call piranha, is actually on the surface of the skin. I, in my martial arts, have experienced some very strange phenomena like that. For example, I watched Cassius Clay hit Sonny Liston. This is before he was Muhammad Ali. He hit Sonny Liston with a roundhouse punch, and Sonny Liston went up in his face and on his back out cold. And yet, on closer inspection, Muhammad Ali didn't even touch him. with Cassius Clay. The blow didn't even touch him. The chi, the intent of emotion of hitting him so hard, it just translated out with what I would call microtubules as chi. Chi, for me, is below my groin, just between my legs and outside my stomach, where I bring it up and push it out.
Yeah, and that's first principle of martial arts. So that's
right.
And you establish your balance.
That is where I think the soul resides, is in that aspect of what we physical plane call chi or prana. It's had many names throughout history. Orgone.
Well, how would you reconcile that then with the chakra in aligning the
chakras? And that's Hindu systems. The 7 chakra points are more highly evolved nerve ganglia, where your bacteria and hierarchy of cavity resonances occur, like your heart, and there are different levels of heart. That's why we have different levels of love. The Greeks had eros, philo, and agape, and they had different kinds of love as it chunked outward into higher forms. And your gut was your first brain. That's where everything originated to determine what you're going to do next, including turning this on or not, the upper brain. And for me, I have discovered that when you visualize your movement of your thought coming up your stomach, or tangen, as they call that, that's you're bringing this up. That's where you're taking your psyche into matter. It's that, and what it's like a veil, and you push against it, and it's a membrane that creates waves outward, just like a drop of water hitting a pool creates a reflected wave back and forth. And the body has always been seen as you, and outside the body is not you. But the non-local mind aspect is something out here. It's not inside, it's more. And psychics can see it. They all have different ways of seeing it, because what they're seeing is in conscious form, which is a type of dream. And because it is, it's in metaphor, like I see an aura. Actually, everybody sees auras. It's the way the cones and rods work in your eye, creating an afterglow behind you. When you look at something red, you have a blue afterglow. And
do you see yourself as a spirit?
Yes and no. A stag and unicorn in the forest go. Soul and spirit.
I got to tell you what, that's going to be some spiny offspring. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I
know. But seriously, I mean,
I know.
How does Richard Miller see himself? I mean, do you see yourself extending after this life here? Do you think that your knowledge will be somehow transmuted to what you are, or how do you see that?
I am you, and you are me, and I am the walrus. If I have it, you have it. Whether you have it at this moment is irrelevant.
Well, I tell people my mantra is I am spirit. I am spirit of one. I am one of many. I am many of one.
I am Popeye. I am.
Now wait a minute. Now we know that.
I am the.
Now we're talking about the holographic.
I am the wizard. I am.
But seriously, getting back on this, I mean, you said yes and no, so you obviously have given this thought. I mean, at our age,
I'm all of it. Yeah. I'm all of it. It's like, and how do you visualize that? You can start with a quantum universe, which tries to take analog music and digitize it. What happens when you use a quantum universe is that you induce an uncertainty principle, where the theorem is the more you know about one thing, the less you know about another. And so you have a certain level of quality that you can get to, and that's that. Whereas a holographic system talks about resolution of information. and the way it chunks down into or out of itself. And so a quantum universe is going to be inequipped with entanglement and decoherence, whereas that's space-time. Whereas, because, okay, let me give you an example. Space. In all physics, you start with assumed truths before you even have a definition. And one assumed
so
truth,
let's when we're talking about space, we're talking XYZ axis, right?
That's correct. And when you do that, you then say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But
I disagree with that.
Measurements today would suggest otherwise. You know,
exactly.
That we have tunneling, we have event horizons, we have precursor waves, we have somehow the information precedes the event. How does that work? Well, it doesn't work with a space-time coordinate system, and that's why we have a wave or a particle. And it's a confusion because is it a wave or is it a particle? And if you want to do a particle, you try to break it down to the finest element that you can, that we can't break down any further than that. And it turns out that may or not be true. What is true is that if you were to suggest that the shortest distance is not a straight line, that space is curved, with simple mathematics, I can prove the Earth's flat.
So let's just stop there a second. When we talk about a wave or a particle, the problem with that equation and that experiment that anyone can do is this. It's almost as, I call it the ether, whatever you want to call it, anticipates your decision, which means that it's always ahead of you no matter how minute that time is.
That's Hameroff. And what he's
exactly.
Theory. His ORC theory is, and you know, most people don't understand Hameroff, but it's a preference. If you have a choice of going right or left, which is most pleasurable?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be always.
That's ORC theory. That's you have a tendency to move toward one direction over
Didn't
another.
he say it was like 0.003 something that there is this quantum variable, wherever that decision is then always going to precede you no matter what you want to see, that is particle or wave?
Then you can't work with space-time and won't work with that because you can't get there.
How do you solve that conundrum?
You create a different set of models, holographic. That's the holographic system. Now that opens a variety of doors that weren't previously available. For example, if you would say that the DNA is a three-dimensional hologram of fourth space, that means who you were, who you are, and who you will be. It somehow contains your life, okay? How you're going to evolve over a period of time. But time not being real, it's you're this, and this, but how you choose to see where you are is an arbitrary thing, again, based on assumed truths and definitions. And information and resolution of information to be distinguished differently than entanglement and decoherence, which is a space-time continuum. When you're dealing with a holographic continuum, now you have a resolution. That means your physical plane would be your IQ. EQ, emotional plane, how you feel about the physical. In other words, more information. And then you go to the next level, which would be causal plane. Causal would be like Plato in basic form in distinguishing a meme from something else, like the distinction between a chair and a couch.
Well, then the illusion that you're describing then is the fact that we think we live in a 3D environment, but technically it's a fourth dimensional.
Well, it's got more than that.
If you put time, well, no, but I mean, if you add time as relative, being a constant in the equation.
Well, that's your fourth dimension. You've got length, girth, and width, and then you add time. And then if you add a fifth dimension, and that's what the brain is. It is a four-dimensional hologram of five space because it's amorphous semiconductor. It's constantly changing. To time travel would be into the past, would be to reconstruct the brain at that moment of inception of that memory. And that's how you time travel.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah,
that
because
hologram.
that I think that's what they say ET brought to us, was when we understood that time is, in fact, in a 5-dimensional space, time is not relevant. It is not
That's correct.
constant.
It's not, neither is space. But
Yeah.
now, guess what? So in string theory, we actually have 10 dimensions, 10 different kinds of dimensions, and an 11th one that interconnects them. And today, with the new directions of string theory and superstring, what they're coming up with is knot theory, in the way you might tie a bowline over a slip knot where it doesn't interface with itself because it's got a plasma or a sheath around it. And so it forms a knot. That's Kaufman's mathematics. I prefer looking at membrane physics for a minute, Bessel functions, where you are an amoeba floating on a surface, and I'm a different one at a different place. And as we sometimes might interface with each other, and when we do, a third and fourth amoeba are created briefly that are where you and I touch each other. And those universes are what construct the decision making of what we would call multiverse. And some of the moments are a brief moment in time, and others are, immortal. They're you floating as a membrane or a thing on a drum. That's why the current cavitation processes are using Bessel functions with fractals. It's really an interesting.
Well, it's very odd that you mentioned fractals. They was doing this evening. I was going through my files, the crop circles, which have abated, but they were basically fractal, high complicated math of a holographic.
I have actually seen in Scotland, I saw a couple of crop circles form in less than 6 minutes. And what happened was the earth groaned, something, like fracking or something. And what happened is a resonance came out, and it just created a resonant pattern, like a chanting across the drum. And that you'll notice that most crop circles are fabricated. That's the bad news. And some farmer out there that do things, let's have some fun with these kids, and make a joint.
Yeah, but they've gotten on film where they're
smoking a joint, winking at well, get a grip. But the sacred geometry is that's resonant physics. When you chant across water, and you try to set the tone just right, what will happen is you'll set up standing waves, and that's where your Sri Yantra and other sacred geometry comes out of it. It's called cymatics. And that is most likely what a crop circle is that there has been some kind of a moan, groan, or otherwise whimper of the earth, and it created a sacred geometry that dropped crops.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think that we're the only species then at the top of the so-called intellectual ladder in this temporal? So
black goo comes to mind, man.
All right. So I wrote you when, I asked you to see if you could come on. You graciously said, yes, you would. And by the way, folks, I put all of his contacts, his books. You need to look at that. I know we'll be talking that near the end, but check it out, folks. So I'm working on this hypothesis that I contend that when man learned how to split the photon, light, the atom, that we unleashed something that we didn't have an understanding of, that I believe that we actually ripped the time-space fabric that basically allowed a portal of sorts to allow, how shall we say, other sentient intelligences through.
Of course, all of that is true. The way I like it best is when the good Reverend Jackson says, good Reverend Jackson says,
I see Harry Connick Jr. doing that. Right.
Here it is. Is that fence over there? Is that a white fence or is that a black fence?
Yeah.
Everybody looks and says, well, it's white. And Reverend Jackson says, take a look at the other side. You can't see.
Exactly.
You understand? Man is limited in what he can see at one moment. And because of that, you only see one side in a dimensional thing that your optics work. You're not going to see the other side. And, you know, God being the Joker has painted the other side black. There it is.
There it is. Right there.
Light frequency. The human eye can't see certain things. And so the correct response to everything is yes. That means if you can conceive of it as being this way, it absolutely is, and even more. And what imagination is reality, and what you can possibly imagine might have happened. Let's take Las Vegas. The Las Vegas shooting is a metaphor. The Las Vegas shooting, they've just come out and said there's no determined, what actually happened. Why? Well, because more than one thing happened. There was like an opportunity, a window of opportunity, and half a dozen different agendas got joined in. We'll fly a helicopter over there and we'll kill a bunch of people so it confuses everybody about gun control. And while we're doing that, the shooting up there in that hotel was on a gun running operation going bad. And over here was a da-da-da-da-da. And so when you say, well, what actually happened at Columbine? The correct answer is yes.
I there's a certain zen in that, so I can see that.
Now you're getting the big picture.
So
and here's the bad news: you're never really going to know because it doesn't work that way. And history is who won, and gets to write the history book on Atlantis and Antarctica and what happened when they evacuated Antarctica.
So
who knows?
Well, yeah. So would you define that this Earth in itself, I mean, you kind of skated through this, but, I take the fact that I believe that I am a sentient spirit. And that's just my belief. That's after a king's ransom, and many, many decades looking at this. But here's my point. By all indications, it would seem by the evidence that this is a prison planet.
There's no question that at the moment of death, you're offered an opportunity for release or not. That's the Bordeaux Thedal. What they talk about is the last grand illusion or choice that you're given.
Great song, by the way.
You see a tunnel of light with all your friends. Come on in, the water's fine. That looks like a birth canal to me.
Well, I teach my audience to reject that nonsense. And
they are getting off the wheel and not bothering with this mess here on Earth. The amount of water in a microtubule is 1 million times more efficient as a solid state physics device than gallium arsenic. When you take gallium and arsenic and you put the two dissimilar metals, that where they touch is called the forbidden zone, and that's where you do all your checksum errors and how a computer chip works.
Let's get a little bit more on that microcontinuum, the water. It's not the same of what people think water is. I've understood it's kind of has lots of special properties, right?
Oh yeah, well, it's got memory to it because it is the smallest known molecule, not helium, which is He2. You got two little binary. It's the first molecule that has a dipole moment. Levo rotary. You have para and ortho water. Now that alone allows clustering of water. Carrie Rames and Willard, old man Willard water that used to be around a waterfall, and it healed you with H309 with a free radical ion. H709, I think I forget I'll have to write this out. H203 is there's different structures of water. Water has H3O2, which is basically hydrogen peroxide with a third hydrogen molecule brought in, and that is the one that is so electrostatic. It holds like itself. It creates a bubble where when you have a drop of water going down, the water restructures slapping itself and forms a bubble of a special kind of water that when it touches things holds memory. And that exclusion zone between the water and the surface of whatever it's touching, usually it's air, is a cavitation process where the air is going into itself like a Roger Penrose's torus twistor space. And it's the very concept of the Casimir effect, how a wave moves faster. Yeah. What do you got?
In the Zohar, what you just described is what they described as God, is the fact that water, this special essence, it's a sphere, it's everywhere. And
it's in everything. That's why microwave is bad, because it heats it up.
Yeah, it's very interesting. As you get into these different, what I call theologies, different religions of the ancients, they seem to be pretty much in tune to a lot of what you're talking about now.
Well, see, science and religion are the same thing from two sides of the brain.
The left, right.
The brain and the right brain. Science and religion, like a closed system. And neither has the right answer.
Yeah. I don't think that, by the way, just who's ever saying, Rick didn't say he believes in the flat earth.
I believe in God. My parents were atheists. They raised me. They sent me to Missouri Synod Catechism. The purpose was to armor me for the Christians that would assault me in high school. And I got assaulted. And but in the study of chaos magic and magic of order, I came to accept or choose to believe, because you'll never know, that there's something taking chaos and making order out of it. Isn't it interesting that everything you eat becomes you?
Oh, yeah. Well, when you talked about persecution, I'm reading on the Cathars, and there was the church. That was the church and the government that came in, and it was a massacre because of their beliefs. And if people don't know who the Cathars are, they lived in France, and they did not believe in the Vatican. They didn't believe in the cross that Christians carry today. They said that is, in fact, nothing more than astrological worship of the cross. But the other thing they didn't believe, Rick, they didn't believe in hell.
Yeah, well, you got that right here. This is purgatory for sure.
Yeah.
And it's a choice again. That's what made you God's favorite, is to see your glass half empty or half full. And you can make it heaven or hell just by your choices. That's how, as a metaphor.
Yeah.
And that's what made you us so unique and interesting, probably, to God, was the diversity of possibilities.
See, I look at God now as the guardian of divinity.
And I think the devil, the devil is not mentioned in the Upanishads. They talk about demons, little trolls. And
Rick, you have to go and watch my video that says that Lucifer is not Satan. And when did Satan get a promotion?
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
It's gotten over 150,000 views. Wow. And my ball series, the one that, So I went through the scriptures and showed Lucifer doesn't exist. Never. The only reason why we have that in there is because of a little idiot called now I can't even get Bernard. No, it's not Bernard. Anyway, he inject that name personally. So Lucifer is a non-being, and the Satan is actually a job description. It means adversary, the accuser. And
interesting. Yeah. Well, I have discovered for myself.
Yeah, it is a self-discovery.
That God, what I conceive of as God, is probably what I can achieve in this lifetime alone. Yeah. And that's only halfway to what God is. And that's why, as I assume truth, I say God is that which cannot be known. You can experience him, but you can't know him. And what you can do is know your higher self and that potential, but realize that's only halfway. That's self-realization. The other 9/10 of your cerebral cortex. And imagination is limited. Imagine what an orca is like with a cerebral cortex that's literally twice the size of men. Okay, that's a computer. And that mammal is firing 60% of it, not 10 like you are.
So
and
that would almost make them a higher intelligent sentient species.
It's able to go places man is not even equipped to even grasp.
Do you think Gene Roddenberry knew that when he put that in the Star Trek movie?
Well, I remember when the Hitchhiker's Guide, when they
exactly
forms that thing called the fish, and worse. By the way, the answer is 42, not 47. 42. Okay, I got that one straight this time too. But I noticed that orca chases dolphin in food chain, and so it's Bob Dylan all over again, where everybody's got to serve somebody. And actually, above Kether in your tree of life, it's the veils of Isis, of Ain, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Ur. And so when you realize there's a hierarchy of things going on here, what does that mean? Well, metaphor. You know, what is your metaphor but to serve your paradox of going from one concept to the next and the way they relate to each other? And so, of course, I have two ox in my meadow.
Well, let's talk about the orcas, Rick. I mean, that's very interesting. Why do you think that the military or the private industrial machine? I mean, that's an interesting thing that the orca has that much of ability to use the pineal gland to that point.
I'm impressed. There are actually 4 cetacean that have bigger brain cases than man. And when you realize if you don't have a thumb and you don't have fire, concepts of technology change. And you can watch a dolphin blowing little sonar bubbles with at least sonoluminescence, little tiny bubbles of air, and they bore rings and they play with them and then they get rid of them. And that's an art form for the dolphin play. And that's a system of cold fusion now being studied at MIT. We have always thought we're the center of the universe. And, you know, in terms of, who was it? Was it not Gerald Clark? Well, Gerald Clark wrote about that, but there was a sci-fi movie called The Seventh, Jupiter Rising.
Yeah. In fact, I just watched that the other night.
The alien is saying, it's all about food chain.
Boy, you know what, folks? By the way, y'all probably have seen it, but go back and watch Jupiter Ascending. That is, I mean, you get into the storyline.
Sci-fi, dealing with lizards and the rest of it. Yeah.
Well, is the fact too that they were able to actually thought folds space folds time folds into destination.
And then you had a movie that was on called Sliders.
Yeah.
You wake up each day and you do it a little bit differently in the way you fall down the stairs and break your neck.
So let's talk about, I want to get back to the orca. So I'm just thinking, so if we expand that out, how big would a whale, you know, when you look at a sperm whale?
The voice of the voices and the cry and the whale songs are changing. And I think that that's part of Gaia, just like Michael Razia.
Yeah.
There's the song of the serpent at the end of the rainbow, you know, the lost chord, which called the Shabad or 0 point energy. Shabad is Shabd. If you'd like to look that up.
There's also a religion, Shamanism, by the way.
Well, yeah, Paul Twitchell came into Satmat under Sawan Singh or someone way back then that talked, it's Shabad or Satmat, Santmat, which was a householder's yoga. It's in and around 14th century. Kabir, other religious teachers got together and they said, what is it we have in common with each other? We know what we disagree on. What is the common thread between your and my belief? And a series of principles came out, like you're not supposed to eat anything with the face of your grandparents. You're supposed to meditate 1/10 of your life. That's 2.5 hours a day, training the mind. Like a Buddhist, that's okay. A series of principles came out. And those talk about soul travel to be distinguished from astral projection. And this is where you hear a sound in the right ear. This is in from Voice of the Silence and the Appendichad writings. And what happens is, for one moment, you die and go back to your roots for just a brief moment. It's called soul travel. And you leave your body. And for me, my experience, as I try to explain it to somebody, is that I'm going into some kind of a geometrical place of origin for renewal where I'm in blue light. And I'm not at liberty to talk about it other than it's that region is called Sach-Khan. And then you come back to the body renewed with the spirit again. And my teacher, Sharon Singh, called it the little death. I'm a Satsangi. I meditate. I've been doing that every day since the mid-70s. And trying to train my mind, knowing that even still, I know I'm not going to know, because I don't know. I don't think it works like that. I think physics and religion are closed systems. And the Bible is actually books on science from a religious point of view, the other side of the brain, science and religion, right and left brain. I think it's like an hourglass, a closed system. And what you have is Malcolm in the middle. And you're trying to find the balance between the two that allows you to function. And
you know what I say, Rick? You know, only slaves need a savior. Free men do not need saviors.
If you had been born in Ethiopia, you would not be a Christian.
I'm not. I ask people all the time, is God a Christian? Well, of course he's not.
Yeah.
He's not a Jew. He's not a Muslim, you know. And here's my dilemma as a philosopher of what I am, is that either all religions are wrong or all religions are right. And if they're
I think you're more correct on the secondary. I think there are as many religions as there are human beings. And religion itself is for fellowship, to reinforce a certain value or belief system. You find people with similar beliefs and you try to reinforce your own.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the real truth is not out there, unlike Molnar.
It's within. You know, and the master taught that. Many masters have taught that. I teach that to my audience, is that if you listen, I'll tell you why the Buddhists, why people should study Buddhism, they should study Hinduism, because these belief systems, they discipline the mind and they prepare the mind for the crossing.
The belief system also is what opens and closes certain doors, and why I could say a Buddhist can be a Christian, but a Christian cannot be a Buddhist. A Buddhist has a broader worldview, and as such has more access to the world.
It's very well stated.
I
love this. Boy, I'll tell you what, Rick, this has been this has been a little unusual, but I've really enjoyed it because
unusual. You enjoyed it.
If you've seen in my archives, here in the next month, I'll be making close to 1,000 videos, and you become one person. I had one person write me from Iran, and he said the thoughts that you project, he said, over here, he says it's revolutionary.
Yeah, China's like that too. It's cultural.
Yeah, it is.
Our culture today is having access to so much information. How do you know what's real anymore?
Oh,
you're overwhelmed, and that is.
So tell people. Go ahead, my friend.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I lost myself anyway.
No, I'll tell you.
Enjoy you. I have no idea where we're going to go, but you realize I feel so blessed to have what I have as what's called an eidetic memory. It's not a photographic memory. It's actually a little different. I'm visual. If I see a picture, I can pull it up in my mind 20 years later and I can see them all.
Rick, I have said that you are a national treasure. That's all I got to say.
Why don't they do that?
I'm telling you, I'll try to put in and see if we can get that made official. So listen, how can people get in touch with you? I've put all of your websites. I've put your books. I put the Amazon. I'll pull that out because Amazon is not.
Yeah, Amazon is screwing me now. I don't sell anything on Amazon. If you buy anything other than me, it came from someone else. It might be
because by the way, they've got you in a full profile, the whole bit. Follow the author. Yeah. All right, I'll get that. Don't go to the website and get the books. I know you have a 3-course audio.
No. I taught metaphysics for 11 years at Harvard, and there were 15 courses, 8 weeks each.
Okay. There you go.
And John Mack took the 3rd course. I sent you the audios on that. He took that course and then started his alien abduction studies at Harvard. And what I've done now is I have a resource download library, free library of old rare manuscripts that are included on each of the metaphysics audiobooks of the physical manuscripts I use to prepare for that talk. So you can go to the Book of Enoch and come to your own conclusions on what I might talk about in terms of Lemegeton and fallen angels. Having the name of the demon allowed you access to controlling the demon. That's why Rumpelstiltskin, you wanted to know the name. What that is a metaphor, is a demon was considered. I taught this at Georgetown. I actually taught a graduate course on demonology at Georgetown. I'm that level of scholarship and what demons are qualities in us deemed unworthy, like jealousy, rage, anger, greed, sloth. They were containerized and they were associated with Babylonian star maps.
Yeah.
And those star clusters and the ways they grouped their stars created sigils, which was the name of the demon. That was the Lemegeton, or the 72 fallen angels. That means there were 72 qualities in man deemed unworthy. Ashtaroth, Beelzebub, all of these things were anger and greed and sloth. Now, if you, instead of using it as a demon, you used it as a tool. For example, anger is a tremendous energy to clean a kitchen floor. And that's how you use these energies, is as tools by containerizing them. And to containerize them is to have their name. Like water is elusive. When Bruce Lee said, become like water, when you put it in a glass, now you can do something with it. You can drink it.
So they can get this in the lecture series, right?
Yes.
Folks, if that wasn't now I appreciate that, Rick. That was a great freebie, folks. I mean, come on, that right there will get you to thinking. Well, Rick, I got my wife standing on the other side.
my very best. My girlfriend just came in too.
So my friend, will you come back on again?
I love working with you. Who knows where we're going to go? And while it may seem the same, I'm growing every day, so I'm able to get closer and closer to articulating the curve. When Steve Gaskins drew a circle on the blackboard and he said, it may not be a perfect circle, but it's a perfect whatever it is.
Well, I know you'll appreciate this one. So it's much like Steppenwolf. This is the magic carpet ride, brother. Rick, I love you.
You can get anything you want.
Exactly. Except for Alice.
There you go.
Rick, I love you, man.
But I want a kilo, Serge. I want a kilo.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you, Rick. Give all my best to everyone there as well.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.